Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
All right.
Hi, Brett.
Hi, Jeff.
Welcome.
How you doing?
Welcome. I'm great. We are recording this in the summertime, and I'm sad to be in a different location from you, but otherwise I'm happy to be in the particular location where I am currently.
And I agree with you. I am happy that you're in that location. I am happy that I am in my location, but I always do love and enjoy when we're together recording this in our wonderful studio, and of course not being able to record it with our special guest today.
Yeah. And I'm in one of my favorite places, and I'm also in one of your favorite places, Maine.
This is true. This is true.
And now I envy both of you because I'm not in either of them.
No. All right. So why don't we get started? All right. So our guest today, a very, very special guest today, is Oswaldo Alvarez. He's more than just a personal and business strategist. He's a companion on your journey to success and fulfillment. With a deep-seated commitment to helping founders and entrepreneurs flourish both in business and in life, Oz brings a unique blend of authenticity and expertise to the table. His own transformative experience, transitioning from a scripted life fueled by ambition to one imbued with meaning and purpose, catalyzed by the loss of his closest friend, ignited a passion for guiding others towards their truest selves. As a co-founder of The Real Authentic Way and many other businesses, Oz creates spaces where individuals can authentically connect and thrive. Oz serves as a trusted coach for members of esteemed organizations like Young Presidents Organization and Entrepreneurs Organization, while also lending his guidance as an Endeavor Miami mentor. A graduate of Yale University with an MBA in finance and strategy, Oz resides in Miami, where his dedication to holistic growth and genuine connection permeates every aspect of his work. And perhaps his most important role is being a dedicated husband and father to his son and daughter. And I might say I have had a front row seat as a friend of Oz's over the last 10 years to his transformation and watching him flourish in his success and to his current role. And it has been wonderful, wonderful to watch. Oz, thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you both for having me.
What a beautiful intro. I'm a little teary-eyed. Thank you. Can you read an intro for me like that one day, Brett? That'd be great.
I will try. I will tell you that I was, just as an aside, I was encouragement and I was listening to a book with my wife in the car driving up here, and Bryan Cranston was reading portions of the book. And the way that guy reads text and the feelings and the emotion that he puts into it was amazing to me. And so perhaps I pulled a little bit of that, although I'm giving myself probably way too much credit. Anyway, dare I say that I could sound like Bryan Cranston when he reads a book and records it. So Audible, if you're listening, I'm sure my rate is a lot less than Bryan Cranston's. Anyway, Oz, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Oz, can I, because you and I don't know each other as well, so can I just interrogate you a little bit about your background? Because I know you went to Yale and got an MBA in finance and did all these great things. Where can you tell us your origin story and how'd you end up at that place?
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Venezuela, right? And whenever I get asked that question, because I think it's part of the transformational process, I give some context because, like Brett said, we have been together in a forum for 10 years, and he has seen a lot of my transformation and a lot of ups and downs in that journey. But everything starts, when I was born in Venezuela. My dad at that time was the president of Congress in Venezuela when Venezuela was like a leading democracy in Latin America. At a very young age, he was president of Congress. He was like 31, and I carried his same name. Right. And I carried the same name. And for most of my, first 18 years, I felt like I had no identity. Like my name is the same as my father. So I copy all his belief system. So he was a Republican, I was a Republican. He was a New York Yankees fan, I was a New York Yankee fan. I even was from the national in Venezuela, we're big on baseball. So I was following his baseball team from where he was born, not my baseball team. So it was like a lot of things that unconsciously I was doing. And I think after all this work, part of that was because I wanted to get his validation and I didn't want to taint his name in any way, right? So what happens was when I was 18, he ran for president in Venezuela and he lost against my godfather because the party split. And that was a painful, very painful moment for the whole family because the whole family, we were, like supporting his career. And that was a priority, not because he asked for, but because it was the dynamic. But for me, it was very painful because for the first time I saw my dad, everything around him started to disappear very fast. He was 52 and everything started to disappear. So the whole identity that I think I was building, I built those years was also falling apart, right? So that's when I started to look for a way out in my world. Like, how can I, a part of me wanted to be myself. And I felt in Venezuela, I couldn't be myself because the stories I was telling myself. I did went to law school in Venezuela. And I think in part was because my father was an attorney. My older brother was an attorney. So I went to law school. But after in that journey, my best friend was a great entrepreneur. And I wanted to be on the other side. Even though I was on the law firm as a very junior attorney, I was seeing all these transactions. I had like that entrepreneurial spirit. But I was not brave enough. Like my best friend was like, let's start this business. And we do a couple of small things without the law firm. But then I said, I need to find a way out. And for me, finding that way out was I'm going to apply to an MBA in the US. I'm going to find scholarships. And it has to be a big name so I can get my dad's validation. And that's why I went to jail for all the wrong reasons. In a way,
right?
But with still a lot of weight because I made that decision in part to get my dad's validation. But I think, and now I know that when you're not necessarily in authenticity and you're doing things to get the validation of others, then you are at the mercy of others, right? And it's hard to find inner peace. So what happened is I got married because I thought, that's a natural thing to do. Like my dad was saying, okay, you're 26, you're going to do your MBA, I think you should get married. And I said, okay, I think so too. And 6 weeks into the MBA program, I got this panic attack that ended up on the emergency room of the Yale hospital. And it was the first time, and thank God, the only time that I totally lost control of my mind to a point that I did felt I was going to die. Not because I was going to do something to myself, but the things were getting out of hand so fast, right? So that was the first red flag, big red flag, I think, that I started to see, wow, why I'm caring so much? Why I am living this life and I'm being disconnected with my passions and the things that I really love. So I had a beautiful experience because it was an emergency case. We were in midterms, so the head of student affairs contacted the head of the mental health department, and I got like the big shot psychiatric of the university, helping me to see if I could continue and all that. And what I learned from that experience was it was the first time that I found a safe space that I can start telling my story, to talk about feelings, to talk about what really was going on, which later in life, when I connect all the dots, say, wow, what a beautiful energy, what a beautiful experience, because now I know the importance of having these outlets, right? So I finished my MBA, came to Miami, started my entrepreneurial journey with a lot of ups and downs, learning a lot. But also I started to see how my own patterns, because of my origins, right? And on the other hand, trying to be independent and flourish financially and all that, there was a lot of belief systems conflicting, right? Because on one hand, my father is super strict. He's one of those rare politicians that he will not only very honest, but he will go extra. Like we not only have to be honest, we have to, make sure we are perceived as honest. to an extreme. Like we had these codes, very strict codes about what's right or wrong. I had that, but on the other hand, I wanted to do businesses and all that. So what started to happen is I started to use these crazy formulas in business, where I was not being authentic. I was still acting not to taint my father's name and being perceived as a fair person. And I created a lot of drama and distortions around myself. And it took me like 8 years of therapy to start to figure out, wow, I got to get out of this drama because I'm the one creating all this drama, right? With some of these patterns, I will be saying, this person took advantage of me, this person took advantage of me. And I got tired of that, right? So I started working with a therapist, and I figured out some stuff. But then my best friend calls me one day and says, listen, we were doing already some businesses together. And he says, he had a passion for aviation. And he said, let's buy a license in Aruba to start an airline. And I said, you're crazy. That's an investor trap. I sent him Warren Buffett articles around it. But we ended up going. And it was a beautiful journey at the beginning with all the challenges and stress. But then things got really, really stressful because we were exposed to the Venezuelan situation, currency controls, a lot of things that put us a lot under stress. And what ended up happening is he got sick and he got cancer. And within a year, he died. And that was then a really, really turning point in my life because I felt like, from the outside, everybody was like admiring the life that I had. Like, wow, you're a partner in an airline, you went to Yale, all these things. But inside I was broken. No peace, a lot of anxiety, a lot of things happen. Beautiful things happens in between when he got sick and he died, in terms of it was 1 year. So we have a chance to have these beautiful, deep conversations around life and purpose. And I remember one time I asked him, like 2 weeks before he died, I asked him, what did you learn about this? And he said, to be grateful. I was like, what? He said, yeah, to be grateful of the people that I have around me, the acts of love. Every time I think about that, I can forget about all the pain and all the things. So I started to learn and started to put some rituals in my life. And obviously when he died, I exited the airline and really took the time to work on myself and figure it out. And in that journey, I started to discover this passion of saying, okay, how can I help other entrepreneurs and other founders to enjoy the ride while they're scaling the business, and making sure that while they're scaling the business, they're still connected to the things that make us feel, I wouldn't say happy. I will say, like Martin Seligman in his book Flourish talks about feeling that we're flourishing, because I think that's the real thing. The real thing for us as humans, after I did all my journeys and everything, I read this book and I was like, holy, I can see how my life changed without reading the book. But now the book is validating why it changed. And it's because there's certain things that we as humans need to be permanently connected to so we don't go to bad places, right? And those things are, how do I connect more with positive emotions, right? How do I maintain myself engaged in a way that life is throwing me challenges in a good way, that is taking me out of my comfort zone and I'm growing, right? The other one is relationships, right? But meaningful relationship. These relationships where I can allow myself to be seen. And this is a huge one because, for example, here in Miami, we are in an ecosystem that a lot of people need to fake it until they make it, right? But there's a lot of struggles in that, right? I remember at times that I will go to cocktail parties and things here in Miami, and people say, hey, how's the business? I say, oh, we're doing great, we're crushing it. And I didn't know if I had a business the next day. And that's real. I'm not exaggerating. Like I was under a lot of financial pressures at times. And it was like, wow, this is heavy. It's like having a astronaut costume and walking in the summer in Miami. It's like very difficult, like to survive like that, right? So I started to do a lot of retreats and mentors and working on myself. And what I discovered in that process is, if I was able to gain some perspective and start to see myself with more self-compassion, right? And I think that was a huge one. Thank you to the Hoffman Institute that I went there. It's an institute in California that it's a resident retreat for a week that you work in your patterns. But the main thing that started to change was the way I was talking to myself, because I could be my worst enemy at times. So I rewrite that internal dialogue with a lot of compassion. And that's when things really started to change. And then I started to use all these tools from all these retreats, from neuroplasticity to working every day on my reactivity and stuff like that. And that's when I started to see all that change. And now that I work with entrepreneur founders and the leadership teams, what I discover, and that's why I don't only do business coaching, is that everything around us has to do with how we show up, right? The energy that we bring. And even though we're not responsible necessarily how people react around us, we are responsible around our own energy every time we come to a meeting, and how we are judging versus remaining curious, how are we shifting our energy and putting to the best possible outcome versus wasting time and energy on drama, and helping people to gain some of these tools and create safe spaces where they can reflect to each other these blind spots from a good place, not necessarily from a place of judgment and reactivity, but from a place of empowering, and a word that I love that is co-elevation. That's my passion now, co-elevating people, which for me is no other thing than connecting heart to heart and making and I think that's a gift of my friendship with my friend who died. I remember when he died, the night that he died, I was obviously devastated, but I used one of these tools of, all right, I'm going to write all the things that I feel blessed because of the friendship we have all this year. And I did that, and I felt this peace, and I went to bed. And I had this dream that on that dream, I went to him, and I was angry in the dream, saying, oh, man, you left me with, not only you left me alone, but you left me with a ton of problems that I have to deal with. And he started laughing on the dream, and he said, hey, man, forget about that. You know that I'm going to be part of every meaningful relationship you have moving forward, right? And there I wake up, and I was crying, and it was very emotional. But now that I reflect back, I think part of the reason of why I do what I do is because I had that energy with him. I had that energy of co-elevation, that I can talk about my shadows, I can talk about my dark sides, I can talk about the things that I felt. And I had a friend that when we will not only contain me, but he will be so empathetic in giving me perspective that I always felt like empowered by his energy. And I think he felt the same way, right? So that's why I think I have so much passion for what I do, because I can see how that energy not only heals, empowers. Like, I think I cannot be at the level that I'm at my coaching practice right now if it were not for relationships like that, my relationship with Brett, right? Being in a forum, and I remember sometimes, and I have to thank Brett, because many times the way he gave me experience shares empower me. Sometimes the people that love us see potential and see things in us that we don't see. But the only thing for that to happen is if you allow yourself to be seen authentically, right? And I think that's part of this journey that I decided to embrace, is how do we help people to allow themselves to be seen in a safe way so you can get empowered and get light on blind spots. So I talk a lot. That's
I mean, there's so much there, and I would say I have a couple questions. I mean, I know Jeff does too. You're like the most passionate and spiritual person I know, and the inner peace that you have is laudable, is amazing, and your journey is amazing, as our listener is now hearing. Going back for a moment, though, to that first sort of tragic event, I'll say tragic, but when you have this breakdown at Yale, and you have this family and your father who is, by all accounts, very conservative, very traditional, very, very driven, and that's where you're going and heading. Did you have any sort of fight, or did you have support from the family, based upon what was going on at that time?
It was a beautiful and a healing moment for me, because sometimes what happens is, and not only in our families, but in life, right? we tend to tell ourselves stories without the tools to have conversations, difficult conversations with the people that we love. So in this case, I was telling myself a lot of stuff that my father never told me, but I was assuming, right? So what happened was, after my panic attack, obviously I was, in a very difficult place because I felt like a failure, not only because I felt like, man, I might get kicked out, or I might need to retreat from this, but also the fact that I was going to a psychiatric at that time in our culture was like, oh man, there's something really wrong with you. But something beautiful happened. So what happened is, my father went to campus, and we had a beautiful lunch where we say, hey man, listen, I love you, and I'm going to love you no matter what you decide to do. If you decide to go back home, you are more than welcome. Nothing wrong with that. If you decide to continue, I think you have the capabilities for this and more, and I will support you. It's on you, but my love is not going to change. And I think that's exactly what I needed to hear, right? Because I was craving so much his validation. And here he was genuinely telling me, I love you no matter what, right? So I think that gave me the energy to say, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I have all the support to do this. And I have tons of love from all my family. My brothers were calling every day. Like it was a beautiful moment that, even though getting into that point, a part of me felt very alone in my own world of protecting an identity. When this happened, I received unconditional love from my whole family, which I think was key to be brave and continue, and actually graduating successfully. I came back. My first semester at Yale was very difficult for many reasons. I got married 2 months before. I got there all on scholarships and debt. In Venezuela, it's different than the US. You go to law school right after high school, right? So you do 5 years of law school. It's different. So I went there, and that's why I also talk a lot about mindset, because what happened to me is, I get there and I start talking to people, and all these people, were coming from investment bankers and a lot of quantitative background, and I had no quantitative background, right? It's like, and so I started in my head to see, oh man, these guys made a mistake here, right? Like, I think I'm that one mistake that they did immediately. And I remember I went to the first statistic class, and the professor was one of these geniuses that was working on the vaccine against AIDS. Super genius, super well-known, but very bad professor. Like, it was very difficult to understand, even for the people that knew statistics, right? So I was like, this guy speaking Chinese, I'm not going to survive. So mentally, I started to go to that path. And it got to a point like, I learned now, like, we as humans, by thought alone, can put us in situations of so much stress that then you get sick, and then you get mental health problems. So now I'm super careful about where my mind is going, because I know how dangerous that can be when we let our mind put all the attention on worst case scenarios. And what a panic attack is you put all your attention to the worst case scenario, and you don't have the capacity to meet that scenario. So that's what you panic, right? So in my case, the worst case scenario was, I'm not gonna be able to survive in this program, and it's gonna be a disaster personally, and all the reason for what I was here are gonna blow in my face.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. A couple of things that you mentioned that I wanted to circle back to. You've talked about a term I haven't really heard before, co-elevation. Can you talk about that? Is that a coaching term? Is that something you employ?
No, I heard that word many years ago, right? And it really resonated. I was in a conference and somebody said, there is a great energy when we co-elevate together, right? And that got me thinking and said, that's when I connected the dot with my best friend who died. And I said, that's exactly what we had. We were growing together. And so what I did is I embraced that word and gave it my own meaning, right? Which is,
what is that meaning?
What is how do you connect heart to heart with someone and support them unconditionally on their potential to grow, right? And their growth. And you help each other to do that. So it's like, what can I do to help you, right? Maximize your potential. And when you find relationships like that, that you are connected heart to heart, you don't need to wear a mask. You can come with all your authenticity and say, listen, man, I'm really struggling with this. I don't know what to do. Like, I remember one time when I was going through my divorce, I was devastated and things were very difficult. And I remember I called my friend crying and said, listen, man, I need to talk to you. I said, where are you? And I said, well, I'm driving in the car. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going through the very difficult moment. They said, come to my building right now. And I get there and he was waiting for me in the lobby. And we went to a room and he says, what's going on? And I started explaining to him. And I had a lot of shame and how I was feeling. And I went like through a list of things, right? And he looked at me and he said, you know what? I hear you. I can see you're going through a very difficult time. Let me tell you how I see you, right? And he started telling me like all the things that I have done, you know, great, and the good businesses that we did together and all that. And it was like this energy of, wow, first of all, I have somebody that I can be authentic. Second of all, I have somebody that loves me and is giving me perspective. And third, he's giving me support through this difficult time, right? And I'm sure that happened the other way around when he got sick and all that. But it's that beautiful energy of a safe space, a safe relationship, heart to heart. You can be fully authentic and you can empower each other from love, right? From a good place, right? So I think that's an energy that I see more and more that I'm able to help co-create with leadership teams and the founders. Because I think, you know, as you guys know, right, running the law firm, sometimes we're faced with very tough decisions and sometimes, you know, it feels lonely, even in partnerships, right? Like sometimes, you know, you go through these periods that you need to have these spaces of authenticity and reality checks that you can regain perspective and continue with your life with less burden, with less weight on your shoulders.
So you bring that, all of this and all of your experiences and your transformation now to trying to help others get to that point. Tell us a little bit about that process, about, you know, how you go about that. Who would be your target audience or your client that really you think you'd have the most success with?
Yeah. So, you know, part of what I do right now is that for me, I'm now so passionate around my own personal growth, right? Because I think for many years I was where I call the carousel, right? Like you're going around and around, and maybe some actors in your life change, but the drama remains, right? I remember I had a friend during the pandemic, and she went to a bad place in the pandemic, and I was talking to her, and she said, I don't know what happened. My last 6 boyfriends, they're all being exactly the same. They mistreat me, and she goes, and I started laughing and said, well, maybe it's time to upgrade the software instead of changing hardware, right? Like there are times in your life, like if things keep repeating and you're not happy with it, well, you got to look inside, right? And for me, I think being so dogmatic the first 18 years of my life, that, you know, with a very rigid belief system, what happened is when I started to open my mind, to expand, to gain a new perspective, to be less judgmental, I open a door of operationalizing personal growth by being very curious. Now I'm passionate about putting light on my blind spots. So everything I do now is relevant to the coaching that I'm doing, right? So it's fascinating now because as I keep growing and keep doing retreats and keep learning tools, I can see how can I apply that immediately with my clients. So I would say, you know, with my clients or the people that contact me now, because it's beautiful that word of mouth, it's usually people that financially they're doing okay, like their business is doing great, but they're not happy, you know, they're not in a good place. So my whole approach is, all right, how do we connect, if it is disconnected, your personal vision with the business vision to make sure there is alignment, to make sure we don't a lot of people, and I see this a lot of entrepreneurs, they will have this mindset that, once I sell my business and I get an exit of 20 million, then I will be happy, and then I will do this, and then I will do that. And it doesn't work like that because of what I told you before. I have received a lot of calls for successful entrepreneurs that they sell their business, and I see a pattern. They go to a depression and they go to a bad place. Why? Because they don't plan for things that are important, and not those things that I told you before about what are the things that we need to be connected to feel like we are flourishing, right? So if you sell your business and you don't have meaningful relationship, and your relationship were transactional, well, now you don't have relationship at all, right? If you're not constantly accomplishing goals, the fact that you sold your business for millions of dollars is not going to make you happy, right? It's going to last just a little bit of time. So part of my work is to remind these founders and entrepreneurs the importance to connect to these things now, right? And the importance to accelerate the things that you really want in your life. And sometimes we have so much head trash, right? Like I remember when I was going through my divorce, I was like, I need to buy a boat because I'm going to spend time with the kids on the boat, and it's a great time to have quality time. And I go pick up my 6-year-old daughter one day. I said, what do you want to do? And she's like, a picnic. And I was like, what? Yeah, picnic. And where do you want to do a picnic? She said, here in the park. And I was like, what? Or one time I told my wife, I want to buy a second home in Colorado because I want to spend time outdoors and all that. And she's like, why do we need to buy a house? Why don't we just rent an Airbnb and see if we like Colorado, right? Like sometimes our mindset put things so difficult because we're busy. And it's like, man, like I remember one time years ago, I was in forum. I says, one of the reasons I live in Miami is because I love the beach, right? And somebody looked at me and says, when was the last time you went to the beach? And I was like, well, like 3 years ago. It's like, why we do this to ourselves? Right? So it's using all these tools and making sure we have these clarity breaks with ourselves. I call it coffee with yourself, that you review the vision.
Did you go to the beach after that conversation?
Of course. No, let me tell you, there is a lot of things that I started to do. Like, for example, my motorcycle trips. I do 4 motorcycle trips a year. Like, I started to do things that I really, really enjoy and do. Last Friday, I went with my son to Dallas to see the Venezuela national soccer team. It was like a beautiful trip. So I started to enjoy myself. Before, I was so worried. Like, I cannot do this. I have to take care of this. I had a pattern of busyness. There was a part at points, there was a part that I would not allow myself to have even enjoy because of everything that was going on in Venezuela, and my dad was in Venezuela. It's like I felt bad having a good time, and now it's different. Now it's like, I'll take care of myself.
Good lesson for us all.
Yeah, so I would say I'm going to read a couple quotes that from Paul Coelho, famous author, wrote The Alchemist and many others. And this reminds me of you and your work. And that is, maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you. You can be who you were meant to be in the first place.
Beautiful.
And that to me sums up you and your journey and the work you're doing. This is amazing. I think our listener is going to be so enriched. I know it's went by so fast. It's already been, our time, and we've taken enough of your time. And we really, really appreciate this. And as I said, I think our listener is going to be enriched beyond. And the show notes will have where everyone can find you to the extent that they're looking for somebody who can provide them with this path to become who you are or you were meant to be in the first place. And I feel like we could talk for hours with you if we had the time. And if I know you're busy and you have the time, but maybe we'll have you back at some point and we can talk further into this realm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. You know how much appreciation and admiration I have for you and for the partnership that you guys have and everything that you have built. Like, it amazed me every time I know an attorney here in Miami and I talk about you guys, how much people respect you guys, and knowing, you personally and knowing where your heart is. I just have great admiration for both of you, for what you guys have built. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you,
Instagram, The Way of Us with OS, The Way of Us. And that's an easy way. And I'm also in LinkedIn as Oswaldo Alvarez. So happy to chat with anybody that is looking for not only coaching, but maybe if they want to reach out and ask about experiences based on what they are at. I have done crazy amount of retreats and happy to help. Enjoy your locations, your undisclosed locations.
Oz, we love you, man. Thank you so much for doing it. We appreciate it. Jeff, you want to read us out?
If you like this episode, please leave us a review, follow the show, share it with your friends, family, and hopefully if you feel so inclined to leave us a 5-star review, that would be the best. But just leave us any review. Give us some feedback. Thanks. See you next time.
Thanks, Oz. Thanks, Jeff. Nelson, thank you, buddy.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit bastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Bast Amron.